Hello, everybody. It's Dr. Osborne, and I'm super glad you're here. We're just all signing on. Love to hear from you. Just let me know if you got any questions as we're going through this. But this is going to be kind of an exciting time for us. We're coming out of kind of uncertain times, and I think one of the big things that I really want us to have is certainty moving forward. So we put together this beautiful series. It's a two-part series, and it's really going to be focused on helping us get to that Freedom 15, the part of where we want to be. It's not now, but where we want to be in the future. So I guess welcome to our advanced class. And I think the beautiful thing is that this is really our advanced healthcare class for June of 2020, and I'm super pumped up for this class. And I'm really looking over the people that have actually registered. And we've had hundreds register, and they're literally people who are coming back that have been to other classes there. We started this year off. We started with new beginnings, right? And then we moved on to how to bulletproof your immune system, and then we moved into healthy families. So this month, we're going to talk about how to lose 15 pounds in 30 days. And in between, we've been talking about corona, shelter in place, comorbidities, asthma, allergies, and lockdown. So what we're going to be talking about is moving forward, not what is, but what we want to be. So June is Nutrition 101 month. More accurately, it's about how do we turn that quarantine 15 into the Freedom 15. And the thing is if you do it right, you can lose 15 pounds in 4 weeks. It's not hard whatsoever. You just have to have a plan there. But we're not really talking about weight loss right now, because weight is just a symptom, right? You can't change a symptom if you don't get to the cause. So before we get started on our kind of this whole plan, I really want to share with you the reason why we do these advanced body signal workshops, right? At the beginning of the year, literally we sit down and we write out a list of all the 12 most common questions, or the 12 biggest concerns that we've heard from our patients over the last year. And then we say, what are they? And then we turn things around, and we do classes on the low back. We talk about nutrition. We talk about things like allergies. So we said, let's formulate these workshops around our dinners, which we usually be running every month, and focusing on these topics. But because of COVID, we're not doing that. But we wanted to make sure that we keep up our commitment to you. So the questions, these are the same questions that you and the people in your family have been having, questions that you've been wanting to ask, but you really weren't sure, you wanted to get clarity on. So this month, we're talking all about nutrition. Who's pumped up? Give me a thumbs up, and we're just going to get started. So I do think the one thing that's super important in this is, and I'm going to kind of have to switch back and forth because I'm still trying to figure out this program on how to move things through here, is we're on a mission in this office, okay? And as I wrote down there for you guys, our mission is really simple. It's just to transform lives. It's not just our lives by working with you, but your lives. We want to transform lives in this office here. That's what gets us up in the morning. That's what puts us to sleep at night there. And so really, we want to restore families, because when people's lives are transformed and their families are restored, it creates outrageous health. And we just really want to ignite this healthcare revolution, right? We want this, we're in revolutionary times, but what if we had this revolution back, meaning a revolution is not going somewhere different, it's going back to where we should have been in the first place. And we do this one family at a time, one community at a time, and we're on this mission to help you discover life. As I was getting ready for this particular class, I was thinking about a story about one of our patients who came in from one of our church talks, and her name was Betsy, and literally her name was Betsy, and she was literally kidnapped by her niece Kendra. And after I reviewed her initial consult forms, I noticed that she was experiencing low back pain, and she was on a walker. She had digestive issues. She was, almost 100 pounds overweight. And I came in on her from her initial consult, and she had took that she suffers from obesity and that she was looking for ways to lose weight. Well, here's the thing: is her focus was really about releasing her walker. Right? It wasn't about the back pain. It was about getting out of that walker. So what we did is we checked her. We did a postural evaluation. We did a computerized nerve system evaluation. We had to take x-rays because of the potential nervous system damage. And she comes back, and we report to her what we see, and that she has a complete reversal of her neck curve and damage to her L5 disc, like the nerves that go down to her legs. I mean, spine from the front, it should be completely straight, right? And from the side, you have to have the three nice smooth curves. And she lost the curves from the side, and she had these massive curves in her low back from the front. And so we dug deeper, and that L5 disc, it was just buckling under pressure. The disc was getting thin. And not only was it getting thin, it started to interfere with her nervous system. The nerves that were coming out of the low back, they were the ones that supplied the muscles that her legs. And she just wanted to get off that walker. And so those nerve supplies, the nerves right down, they actually supply life to the digestive system and the reproductive system, all the things of which you've been having trouble with. So what we did is we looked at her x-rays. We told her what we know. We know what's causing your low back pain. We know what's causing your leg weakness. And your low back is subluxated, and it's interfering with your brain communicating with your body. So she says, okay, doc, how do we correct it? So she follows our recommendations. She starts getting adjusted. She starts getting amazing results. All of her scores are just going sky high, and her x-rays are starting to shift and change. And it's just really cool watching that. And she's feeling better than she has felt in years. And so as this goes on, months go past, Betsy, kind of is going through the process of healing as what's called corrective care. And it really is what's about rebuilding and restoring the spine. And she gets to wellness care. And in wellness care, those of you know on the walls around our office, it's all about maintaining optimal function and investing in your health long-term and keeping your body in top condition. So one of the things I start to notice is that every once in a while she'd come back and her she's getting adjusted. She would say, oh, my back is hurting. And she'd start to get some of her low back pain back again. And she's been really good with her low back, but her back was still having challenges. And I asked her, how was this week? She'd say it was good. And then the next week she'd say it was bad. So I sat down with her, and I sat down with us. And then when she would come back, I noticed this was a reoccurring trend. So one day we basically had to call out the elephant in the room. And I said, look, one of the things that when it comes to our bodies, it's important to get adjusted. But there's other aspects of health that we really need to make sure are in line. And she was like, I know what you're saying, doc. I really need to focus on my waist. What can we do to get my weight down? So we sit down with her one day and we take her through these principles, literally the exact principles that we're going to be going through tonight about healthy eating, healthy fueling your body with good essential nutrients. And not just that, about burning calories. What are the aspects of exercise we have to incorporate? And how does our hormonal system work into this? Because as you'll learn in a second, a weight problem is really a hormone problem, right? Or is it a health problem? It's a hormone problem. So does this make sense, guys? A weight problem is actually a hormone problem, not a health problem. So the month starts to pass and Betsy starts to learn. She starts incorporating and really taking, full responsibility over the next 3 months. And she's dropped almost 50 pounds, which is just literally amazing. And another 3 months passes and she's dropped another 30 pounds. But not only is she looking good and feeling fantastic, but guess what? Her adjustments are holding better. Hello? Her back pain is completely gone. And then she, and she basically comes in, she says, look, I'm just feeling, really amazing. And I haven't told anyone that, but my menstrual cycle has become normal again. Oh my gosh, that's pretty cool, right? So we know when it comes to your body, yes, adjustments are there to help maintain the integrity of the nervous system, but healthy eating, healthy fueling our body with the right food is an integral part of getting the most of your body long term. Okay. So does that make sense, guys? So I don't know. What I want to do is let's just kind of I want to get stuck in a couple places here. Number one, the first thing I want to do is talk about this is really what's your objective for being here tonight. Okay. So if your objective is it can be a couple different things. It can be about losing weight. It can, it could be about avoiding disease. It could be about, some of our athletes, it could be about increasing strength and increasing stamina. There's so many other, or it can be about increasing, capacity, or just really about increasing optimal health. So when we look at these things like healthy eating, we always have to start with what's our objective, and we have to stop with the end in mind, the end goal in mind. Why are we doing what we're doing? What are our goals? So what is it to lose weight? Is it, like I said, is it to avoid disease? Yeah, that's a big one. And we're going to talk about that in a second. Or are you on a person that's already on the right track and you want to do great things and feel better? Yeah, let's shed a few extra pounds there. Let's increase your performance. Let's create optimal health. Let's break the guessing game machine, okay? So, I think the big thing that's important to me, and if you always ask me, it's always optimal health. Because if you look at optimal health, what is optimal health? Well, optimal health is really essentially let me see if I can move this forward there. Optimal health is essentially, it's just about maximize function, right? It's about improved function. It's about how we measure the biomarkers in our bodies so that we can measure the different aspects of our health, which is like increasing performance. And the big one, right, that we all want is we want to look good. We want to feel good. We want to function better because I don't know about you guys, but I'm kind of a health nut. And I'm sure you've noticed coming through a lot of workshops that there are a lot of repeat faces here and coming to here to get adjusted regularly. We're all health nuts here and we love being healthy. But I know about you, one of the things that I can say for sure is how about this, what we call the new health, right? The new health is all about getting sexy, right? And I think that's like that. I love using that term because when you think about it, like, health is kind of sexy. It's a good thing to be healthy. I mean, health is sexy. When we see people coming through and they're in different decades, like we have some people from their tens to their 20s and their 30s and their 40s. We have like people that are in their 90s, late 90s, earlier hundreds. And you know what? Like I have a lady that came in just after she was gardening, and she's in her 90s, and she's darn healthy. And I'll tell you what, that is just amazing. I can sure she looks good too, right? So healthy is the new sexy. We really want to make sure that we invest in our body. We want to look great. We want to feel great, but we also want to function great. So I think the biggest problem is that most of the times we just don't face the brutal facts. And before we get into this, I don't want to be Debbie Downer, but I want to take you through what the statistics are showing at the moment, particularly around the area of obesity, particularly around the area of weight management and weight gain. And I was reading some statistics about the obesity rate, and it's steadily increased. Think about this. It's steadily increased since 1962, when they found that about 23% of the people in the United States were obese. By 2019, the figures from the CDC found that more than 1/3, or 36.5% of United States adults, or almost 18% of children, were actually obese. And think about that. Think about what that means. A second study that literally came out recently from the Center for Health Statistics at the CDC showed that almost 40%, or more than 40% of adults were obese. And think about that. What does that mean? The crazy thing is they found that almost 65% of American adults were either overweight or obese. 65%, more than half. That's a scary statistic. And 63% of American girls, teenage girls, were overweight by age. So that's scary, just on the sheer numbers. But the problem is this study was done a few years ago. And what they were expecting is that by 2020, and guess what year we're in right now? We're in 2020. They expected that 3/4 of American population will be either overweight or obese. And that was done at Harvard, and we're right on track with that. And that is a scary statistic. In fact, they're projecting that by 2030, almost 50% of the United States population is going to be obese. It's been cited as the contributing factor to almost 100,000, depending on what studies you look at, to 400,000 deaths a year, and it's increased our healthcare expenses from up to $117 billion a year. I mean, think about that. Those are staggering statistics, and this exceeds the healthcare costs associated with smoking. Think about how much energy we put into stopping smoking, or think how much energy that we put into stopping cancer, right? So really, you guys got to know this. It's the brutal facts. We got to have a big enough why. We got to know the brutal facts. And I think one of the brutal facts is that there's a large subset of people that are also overweight, but they're not yet obese. And so this is where it starts, where the stats become pretty damning stuff. And that obesity, what it causes is obviously a poor diet and physical activity. But we've got the issue is we've got a weight problem, and we actually have a health problem. And this is what I need you to understand. The first writer downer is that if we have a weight problem, we also have a health problem. Does that make sense? And I can see everybody kind of shaking their heads at home. We know this inherently. that we know that if we have a weight problem, we have a health problem, because when we have weight problems, we have cardiovascular issues. We have things like cancers and chronic disease and chronic long-term. These are the chronic long-term leading killers of in the United States. And the research is telling us more and more there's an absolute link between what you're consuming and how you're fueling your body and the impact that it has on chronic issues. There's a guy called Oshansky, and he said that obesity diminishes the length of your life by an average of 5 to 20 years. And history has shown us that the number of years lost will continue to grow because the likelihood of new generations of being obese and overweight is getting higher and higher. Children right now are experiencing obesity at younger ages. They're literally eating less healthy and becoming less active, and it's resulting in less time lived compared to their parents. That's why they say that the expectancy for the newer generations is lower. Their life expectancy is lower due to the obesity and health risks that they experience in the later generations there. So what do we do about it, right? What's the plan? So when you think of obesity, what we need to think about is not that it's an issue of weight. We need to think about it as downstream conditions. So when you think of it, I want you to think of the downstream conditions, the long-term side effects like the heart disease and the diabetes and the cancer and all the stuff that we know is the biggest killer. It's the biggest chronic disease burden in our country right now. And also more than the cost, with the cost is to our family and the heartache that it costs our family. So what we have to understand is that fat is equal to sick. And I'm not calling anybody names. I'm not fat shaming anybody. I'm not trying. I just need to be real right now. I've been doing this for 25 years. And actually I've been in healthcare for over 30 years now. Interacted with thousands upon thousands of patients, almost a million individual interactions with patients. One thing that we have to do is we have to be honest with ourselves. So when we look at obesity, think of the things that are down the road. Where we are right now, most of us are just getting by, but we have to start thinking about where we are down the road. And I want us to take this seriously. We just got to call fat what it is. Fat is equal to sick. And I mean, it really is equal to sick. It's a sign that, hey, something's not working. Something is not working properly, and we need to change something there. So I guess the thing that I want you to understand is if you keep doing what you're doing, you're going to keep getting what you're getting, right? And so people are, there's something we're doing that's not working properly as well. And so when we stop looking at when we start looking at somebody and we say somebody is overweight or obese, we need to stop and think about that for a second, because you'll hear me talk about that often when you come to workshops and when you're getting adjusted. You're going to hear me talk about signs and symptoms. And you guys have heard that, right? We talk about signs and symptoms. The difference between a sign and a symptom is a sign is something that we can really measure. So where the important thing is when we start looking at weight is a symptom, and that typically means that a problem is building up over a short period of time and eventually over a longer period of time, right? So we have to start to think that weight is actually a symptom of something going wrong. Let me go back here for a second. Sorry about that. So we so moving forward, we know that fat is equal to sick, and we know that fat is equal to a symptom. It's our body telling us something. It's a sign. It's becoming that it's a symptom where we'll start to experience symptoms later on. We're feeling it now, but just like any symptom, the body continues, and if we continue to ignore it, our body long-term, that symptom will become a disability. So just know that fat is a symptom. It's a body signal of something that we need to change. So when we really look at things like obesity, when we look at things like weight issues, really the core of all this is we need to understand that in order to get a long-term change, we need to understand that weight issues are really a chronic hormone imbalance. Our hormones control and regulate everything in our body there. And so there's a really close correlation between the central nervous system and our hormonal system and adiposity, or a fancy term for fat, extra body fat and body, and just the extra body that we have. Fat is a symptom of a chronic hormone imbalance. And I want you to, that's the next thing I want you to write down. Fat is a symptom of chronic hormone imbalance. And typically there are certain hormones that are really closely linked to things like cortisol, to things like this, like cortisol. So like think about stress, right? Stress, you've heard about stress raising your cortisol levels, but things like insulin, right? There's another fat hormone. And there's a lot of confusion out there when people talk about insulin. Is it good? Is it bad? How does it work? How does it contribute? But really, the weight problem is a chronic hormone imbalance. Unwanted healthy fat is really a symptom of this hormonal imbalance of insulin and cortisol there. And as we kind of move forward in this, we got to figure out what's the plan, right? Well, how do we understand what this perfect storm of insulin imbalance is? And there's really three main sections that we're going to cover. When we look at this down in detail tonight, because the first part of it leads to this chronic hormone storm, and it's called toxic and deficient food choices, right? There's three parts to this, but the toxic and deficient food choices is the number one thing that we have to address to fix the hormonal problem that creates the weight problem there. So first part is, what are we consuming? Are we consuming healthy food? Are we consuming fuel? Are we consuming things that's good for us? Are we even consuming food, right? Are we consuming food that has deficient and has no nutrients, no good stuff in it, or worse? Maybe that's one of the reasons for the quarantine 15, because most people are shopping for foods that they could keep in their freezer, right? There's foods that are out there that are toxic for us. And we're going to go into some stuff tonight, which I'm sure will blow your mind. Toxic and deficient food choices. There's, number one, they create, the second thing is energy imbalances that we really have to look at. So the first step in the hormone storm is toxic and deficient food choices. The second one is energy imbalances. It's that sedentary lifestyle, right? The sedentary lifestyle, the excess calories, are we moving enough? How are we burning those calories that we're consuming? Because remember, we need to burn more over this or the same as we consume, right? Like, do we need to, as we increase our consumption, do we need to burn more calories? Yes, we do. Otherwise, it's a simple equation. If we don't burn as much, then the weight goes on, and it adds to things like chronic life, and you add things like chronic life stresses, lack of sleep. I think it's fair to say, and you guys hear me say this all the time, life is unnaturally stressful. And if I could see you right now, you'd all be nodding your heads. And if that makes sense, right? Life is chronically stressful, unnaturally stressful. We need to look at ways that we lead our life, the way that we lead our life nowadays, and all the stresses that build up over time. We know that chronic social stress or lack of chronic exhaustion that is created when it comes to, it leads to a lack of chronic exhaustion that's created when it comes to our hormones. So if you look at what's been happening over, let's say, the last 3 months for us, many of us have started eating toxic and deficient foods. We've been eating the comfort foods. We've been sitting on the couches a little bit more, getting less exercise. All the gyms are closed. We've been, grazing in the kitchen because we're bored. And then we have this chronic social stress. And one of the biggest social stresses is not being able to connect with people. And then we've been staying up later, and we're actually more tired than we were when we were actually, out and about in society, going to work every day. So here's how we regain control of our hormones. The first thing that we have to do is really look at food quality. So tonight, in order to really find a solution, we need to look at a long-term strategy to manage this. And we're going to really address 6 main issues. And when it comes to healthy function, healthy eating, healthy food habits long-term, we're going to talk about food quality, right? We're going to talk about food. We're also going to talk about food quantity. We're also going to talk about food rhythms. When do we eat? What's the habit that we develop? Do we skip breakfast? Do we try to skip meals? Do we eat 5 meals a day? What do we do after a workout? When do we eat? And nighttime food rhythms. Oh my gosh! When we're going to go talk about activity level, we're going to talk about social stress. We're going to address things like sleep patterns. And think about this. Who here thinks that sleep is important, right? All of us, hopefully. Like, if you've been to the sleep class, or if you try going a day without having sleep and see how it affects you. Yes, the whole room, if we were standing in a room, would be holding up their hands. Everybody knows our sleep patterns are important, but we can't forget that on many levels. We can't forget about it when it comes to our physical health, but more important with sleep, it's our emotional health. and our emotional health and our physical health and our chemical health, those are all things that also impact the nervous system, which change how we adapt to the stress. When we have negative impacts on the nervous system, it'll change how we adapt to the stresses of the lives that we're living right now. So I think one of the big things that's kind of important is, look, I'm all about being brutally honest. And so let's talk about what we call the top 5 dieting lies, right? So what are the lies? And I'm here to tell you tonight that you've been lied to. You've probably been lying to yourself. Other people have been lying to you. And I know you're shocked, right? But we've all been lied to when it comes to our health. And you've probably heard all these things, especially when it comes to eating healthy and nourishing our body and eating good quality food. So let's have a look at the first big lie that's here. And I've got to say, I probably hate this one the most. And speaking to other chiropractors like Dr. Sherry in the office and Dr. Doss before the workshop, we all agreed that number one is the most common lie that we hear. And I think that when we think about that, have you ever said that weight problems run in my family, right? Who's heard that before, right? We've probably said that, oh, my mom's heavy, my mom's big bone, my dad's big bone. It's the number one lie and we're here to tell you that weight problems run in families, but and what that says is that if that's the case, then my genes will actually dictate whether I'm going to be overweight or not. I saw this cute little comic once that it said, it's not your genes, it's not that weight runs in your family doesn't run, right? So if we look at this Venn diagram here, and I think this is an important thing because once we understand truth, then we can release the stories that we've been telling ourselves that have been keeping us trapped where we are. So if you look at the Venn diagram, it literally summarizes perfectly what the science tells us when it comes to this. And there's 3 components that need to come together, and that's going to make up our health and how we're functioning. And only one of those components is genetics. So our genes are absolutely important. But really, our genes are relatively unchanged over the last 4,000 years. So we know that our gene is one component, right? It's an important one, but it's not the only piece in the puzzle. Like I said, in 1963, 23% of the population was obese, and now, 40 years later, or 50 years later, almost 50% of the population is obese. Does it mean that our genes have changed in the last 50 years, or something different that we're doing, right? Does that make sense, guys? So genes are one component. The number 2 component is our environment. What do we expose our bodies to? And the number 3 component is our lifestyle. So what kind of habits do we develop when it comes to our lifestyle? When it comes to things like exercise, when it comes to things like our nutrition, when it comes to things like our sleep and the thoughts that go through our heads, and we combine these 3 things, we end up with this section here in the middle. And this is essentially what our results are. And when we look at these 3 things, can we change our genes? No, we can't change our genes, right? Can we change our environment? We can change our environment. We can change the environment that we live in. But you can move out. Some of us just can't move out of the Silicon Valley and move into the forests of Idaho, right? But we can totally change our lifestyle. Our lifestyle is fully under our control because our lifestyle is a choice that we've made. So rather than dwelling on the things that we can't change, genes can be expressed or they can be suppressed. What we want to focus on is the things that we do have absolute control over. Our lifestyle, our eating well, our moving well, our thinking well. Well, all the relationships that we choose to engage in and the strategies and the choices that do well, the habits that we develop over time. So we really want to make sure that we focus on these areas that we have absolute control of, because I know that's where our biggest return of investment is. So I love this picture when we start talking about genes. If you look in the last couple of decades, if you look to the left, that 1990, the country's all blue, right? And if you look at the dark blue in the 1990s, those were the countries where there was obesity. And then if you look 8 years later in 1998, almost the whole country is dark blue, and they're in obesity. Now you look to 2006, there's very even little blue because we had to start we had to start a whole new category for obesity in certain states there. And where do you think it is right now? It's not our genes. So do you remember when I was talking about Betsy a little bit earlier? So this is Betsy. Betsy grew up. There's Betsy on that picture in the middle. and this is her niece that decided to bring her in. And Kendra says, "I'm so happy with my results that I get to have my auntie in on it." Uh, this is Betsy on the right hand side. She's almost 100 pounds lighter than she was when she first started there. Think about that. Think about what it feels like to release 100 pounds. Now, I'm not just speaking as somebody that has all the answers. I've been through this. At one point in my life after my second kid was born, I got up to 285 pounds. I stay at about 190 pounds right now. The point is my genes haven't changed in the last 20 years. It's just my lifestyle changed. I changed my environment. And if I can do it, you guys can do it there. Okay. So what changed in her? It was the way that she thought, the way that she moved, the relationships and the strategies and the choices. She developed a partner in her niece that helped her and supported her through this process. And that's going to be one of the things I'm going to suggest that each of you do as we go through this process over the next month. This is an introductory. I'll replay the webinar just so that somebody else can have access to it. But next week, Dr. Sherry and I are going to do a deep dive into the plan. We're going to do a deep dive into the plan, and we're going to really break it down. It's going to be the nuts and bolts part there. And what we're going to do that's different than in most like challenges that we've done, we're going to have a new set of challenges every week. And the reason being is a lot of times when we have a challenge, you do something for 30 days, you get bored after the end of the first week. So if we can keep changing it up week after week, what you're going to start to find is that we'll actually get that dopamine released, and they'll keep you nice and happy there and doing something different. So here's the other thing, by the way. I was going to say, make sure that you register for that. You should be receiving a link to this. It'll be on Facebook. You'll get it on email through the office. Just send it out to your friends and share it with them, especially if you have somebody that's going to be a partner in on this. So we know that health comes in all shapes and sizes. Okay. Not everybody is a string bean, right? Just nod your head if that makes sense. Just take a look around your family, walk through Walmart, and you'll see all different types of shapes and sizes. Absolute health comes in all shapes and sizes. You don't have to be perfect. Our genes will dictate our body type. And we see in the picture that there's different types of people with different body shapes, right? We got the ectomorph, which is, the tall, lanky people that are all ripped, that have, that don't have much body fat on them. And then we have the mesomorphs, where we looking in the middle, they kind of got the big middle there. And usually they're going to bunch up with muscle. They go to the gym, they look at the weights and they put on more muscle than I've ever been able to put on. And then we got the endomorphs, right? These are the people who are naturally a little bit more rounded and have more of a riper shaped figure. Look, I don't care what your shape is. It's all about you being healthy. And so we know that all three of these genetics have different genes. Their makeups, the goal is that they still have genes to be healthy. They still all have the same requirements to be healthy. And so we know that health comes in all shapes and sizes, and genetics is one part, but lifestyle, once again, lifestyle and environment is absolutely what makes up whether we express our genes healthily or whether we are expressing them sickly, all right? Unhealthily, we suppress our genes. Let's do something different. Let's start to correct this. So I guess the question is that, what's the goal, right? So how do we get 15 pounds healthier? So 15 pounds healthier, and it's not lighter, right? You notice I didn't say lighter. You notice I didn't say 15 pounds thinner. I want you to be 15 pounds lighter. Healthier, so that you can have the energy, you can have the vitality, you can have who you want to be there. And so when we're looking at things like body, our goal is to have cutting down the fat. We want to become 15 pounds healthier. That means we want to develop more lean tissue, more muscle mass versus the amount of fatty tissue. We want to substitute fatty tissue with healthy tissue and lean muscle mass. So we're going to start looking at certain things there. We'll be able to do a test if you're going to be in the challenge. That will do a body fat composition test where you can actually test yourself. But these are the kind of things, there's things that you can do to measure our body and it will also give you things like doing abdominal measurements, right? To be able to see what your abdominal measurements are. And we've seen research, and you've all heard that, the science talking about abdominal measurements and the direct link between abdominal circumference and the repercussions it has with chronic disease. So we want to see that abdomen shrink. Look, number one, fat doesn't run in your family, right? Like I said earlier, it's just the people in your family don't run. right? So that hopefully this makes a little bit more sense. And typically this is typically what tends to happen. So number one, we just want to make sure that we can absolutely control our lifestyle and our environment. And that's what we mean by 15 pounds healthier. Okay, let's talk about line number two. Line number two is this. A lot of times we think that all we have to do is eat less to lose weight, right? And I just want to kind of pause for a second, because this one really hits home for me, because I was a youngster growing up, and my sisters, every 2 months, I'd hear my sister say, I'm going to go on a diet, right? And I hear this all the time. People say, I'm going to go on a diet. I can't fit into my dresses. I'm going to go on a diet. I got it, right? People say, I got to lose some weight. I'm feeling overweight. And that's what my sisters would say. But she was actually in pretty good shape. But what should she say is that the question is how was she going to lose the weight, right? And what did she, most of the time she did, she'd say, I'm just not going to eat, right? She'd starve herself. And then, the problem is that you start starving yourself, and what happens for the next week? You stop eating for the next week, you start losing weight. And then what happens? The weight comes off temporarily. But really, guys, I guess the question is this sustainable? Have you ever tried a starvation diet and found that it worked, right? Because eventually you do a starvation diet for long enough, like you're not going to be alive. So I think the big thing is the answer is this, is that food deprivation fails. It's unsustainable. It creates metabolic havoc. It puts our body into survival mode. And it really is short-term torture. And so it's like depriving yourself of something. And you found this, and you've probably even said it to yourself, why am I torturing myself like this? So food deprivation is like I said, is unsustainable. And that's the biggest thing. So whenever we do anything here in the practice, we really want to create not just results, but we want to create a sustainable result over the long term. And that's what this is really about, right? Sustainable results over the long term. And my mom would, every once in a while, you have your mom, she or my sisters, they would do well on their diet for a week or two. And then she'd lose some weight, and then maybe it was just water retention, but she would lose that weight. And then 2 to 3 weeks later, she'd like, I'm hungry, I'm going to start eating, and I'm going to slowly start eating again. And the weight would come back on. So that's how we know it's sustainable. We've all been through this. And here's the big thing. It's about the metabolic changes. So if we think about this for a second, when it comes to energy, our body, let me ask you this question. Is fat a long-term energy source, right? Yeah, it's a long-term energy source. So when you look down on your body, it means that your body's been storing extra energy there. And this is a big thing, because what is the thing that stores fat? Why do we store fat when we're under stress? Because we're under stress. What happens when our body perceives that we're in starvation mode? It's going to try to store fat. It's going to make those metabolic changes. So our body changes, and I mean, it's like it says to itself, look, I haven't eaten for a long time. So what it actually does is it starts to grab for food. Now, what it does is your body doesn't grab for food. It makes you grab for food. Now, my sisters or my mom would eat, and they'd act like they ate for the very first time in 2 weeks, and they'd grab food and say, hey, I'm not getting fed. Your body would say, you're not getting fed very often. I need a long-term energy source. And then eventually it starts to burn that long-term energy, like that source of the fat. So the big thing that is important is that what we need to understand is that, yes, when you starve yourself, your body will take the long-term energy, but it also doesn't think that it's going to get the next meal. And so what it's going to do is it's going to also start to store that energy there too. So I think that we all know that food deprivation fails, but check this out. The third biggest thing that I found is that calories are calories. And I can make it really simple for you. Calories are not calories, because if you eat a chocolate bar and you eat almonds, the same number of calories, which one's going to make you fatter, right? Which one's going to make you healthier? Remember, we're trying to become healthy. We don't care about fat. Fat is just a symptom. In the process of getting healthy, that's when we lose weight. So This is that big lie that I need you to understand is that big lie number 3 is probably the biggest lie that we see, and the least understood one. Like I said, calories are calories, meaning that I'm allowed to consume for today to maintain a certain body weight, a certain number of calories. And then, let's say that's 2,500 calories. And guess what? This chocolate bar is 600 calories. This muffin's 300 calories. I'm going to have a turkey sandwich, which is 500 calories. I'll have another chocolate bar. And there's my 2,500 calories. Sure, I'm safe, right? But do you have all the food that you want, right? And right now, we have to know that because the different foods have different levels of nutrients, and they have different levels of minerals, they're going to have a different impact on your body. And at the same time, there are tons of foods out there that are completely nutrient dead, completely nutrient deficient, and worse, they're toxic for our body. So these things, it's a calorie is not a calorie. A calorie creates what we call the perfect hormonal storm there. So just about everybody really seen the food chart, right? And if you look at the food chart right here, what's on the bottom part? It's all breads, right? So this food pyramid came back in the 60s and the 80s, and it was put out there, and it was like the be all or the end all. So when it comes to nutrition, they used to say, hey, you want to eat healthy? Well, here's the food pyramid, and this is exactly what we need to do. You eat from the bottom up, right? We're going to fill this thing up with things that you should be eating, and it's things like bread and pretzels, because bread and pretzels and croissants and flour. That was like the bottom of the food pyramid. And then we'll add a little bit of vegetables, maybe some fruits into there, maybe some lean meats up there, maybe some dairy. And oh, by the way, at the very top, we might have some sweets and fats. Look, I want you to understand this, is that if this worked, we wouldn't have had this obesity epidemic that was happening. And what we're going to teach you is how to flip this pyramid right upside down. And I really, the big thing is that if we can flip the pyramid upside down, we can do something different than what everybody else is doing. And I think that so that's our goal. And we're going to teach you that next week. All right. So let's talk about what our body needs. So on the left, we have the wild hunter-gatherer, and on the right, we have the modern industrialized human, right? And this is how it goes. We know that industrialized modern man, we like high carbohydrates, low fat, and even if we are eating fat, it's usually toxic fats. They're like hydrogenated oils and things that are fried. They take all the fat out of the foods. We have the low protein, no real red meat, and we make sure that they're telling everybody to stay away from red meat, right? And we also have like a lot of sugary foods, and we say, well, everything in moderation should be okay. If food is okay in moderation, but suddenly we're finding sugars everywhere. It's being put into different foods as a preservative and try to hold the shelf life. And instead, as opposed to looking at the wild hunter-gatherer, who's back in the day, look at our ancestors. They were eating things like high density carbohydrate, like carbohydrates that were from plants, right? They're eating good, healthy fats. Fats are acceptable. They have a massive purpose in the body, but they're eating high protein, no refined foods, no dairy, sugar. So if you were to just do one thing right now that would forever change your life, make a choice. Make a choice of what you're going to be. Are you going to be a wild hunter-gatherer, or are you going to be industrialized modern human? And there's the wild hunter-gatherer. Those are the healthy people, the ones that can get up and run and move, and they have long, healthy lives without chronic disease. And then industrialized modern man, they're the ones that are on, the average person at 65 is on 7 medications on a daily basis there. So what we got to do is we got to stay away from the dairy and the sugar, which is 2 of the biggest inflammatory agents. Now, some say, I can hear you, but our ancestors back then, they used to live to 40 years old, right? Well, no, that's not true. They used to die in childbirth, and 40 years old was the average. So if you didn't die in childbirth, studies show that you lived essentially as long as the people that now are living in nursing homes, not knowing their own names. Research tells us that we're designed to live 90 years, and that's without chronic disease, right? And so life expectancy was shorter because they died in childbirth and they got eaten by a woolly mammoth. We don't have a lot of woolly mammoths these days, but we've progressed in areas in our healthcare system, which allows us to get away to like it gives a lot of the medications become permission to allow us to live a lifestyle without having to pay the consequences of our lifestyle there. And we're getting to a point where it doesn't work. And so, we want to, in the back in the day, you would have to hunt to gather your food. We had to conserve energy. Nowadays, we basically you go to a drive-through and they put a bag of stuff in your car. But, the fast food is really the worst thing. So if you don't want to be an industrialized human, you don't want to be a wild hunter-gatherer, why don't you just start by making a choice and staying away from drive-throughs, okay? So we're going to talk about poor food quality. And I think poor food quality is super important because we know that when it comes to food, there's no nutrients, we know that it's toxic for our body. So we put something into our body that's either a toxin or it's a nutrient. So if there's no nutrients in the food that we're eating, by definition, it's a toxin and it's deficient, and it creates unbalanced choices in our hormones there. It's not about calories. It's about what the types of foods that we're choosing. Are they creating deficiency? Or are we filling ourselves with nutrient deficient or nutrient sufficient choices right now? All right. So the question then is that what does all this have to do with anything? How does, we know that those things will impact our hormones, but there's really 3 hormones that you got to know something about. And and these are the 3 things that cause most of our hormonal problems. And we're going to talk about things like insulin and glucagon and cortisol. And the biggest one that we're going to really look at first is the big I, the big insulin. And you guys have probably heard about this. I don't think there's a person in the country that doesn't know about insulin. But when we talk about insulin, insulin is a hormone that the pancreas releases. And so when we eat food, our pancreas senses that there's carbohydrates or sugar in the bloodstream, and it releases insulin. And now I want you to think of, when you eat insulin, think of insulin as the fat storage hormone to think about. And just think about it a second. Insulin equals fat storage. So anything that you eat that actually creates insulin, that raises your insulin levels, will cause you to start your fat storage. So, and really, basically, everything goes to fat when you eat insulin. That's why people gain weight when they're diabetics. That's why when somebody takes insulin for their diabetes, they actually gain more weight. So what causes an elevated insulin level? I think the big thing is this. People say things like, hey, stay away from carbs and sugar, but it's the way that it's staying away from simple sugars and simple carbohydrates. Because we know that foods that cause insulin to go up are things like carbs and the sugars and the refined carbohydrates. So you have to stay away from the processed carbohydrates where there's no nutritional value in them whatsoever. Like I said, the things that were at the base of the food pyramid, the breads, the pastas, the cereals, the wheats, the grains. Those are the things that we need to stay away from. Think about this. Think about staying away from things like donuts. Donut literally is white bread, and on top of that white bread, we put some sugar with sprinkles on it, and then we dip it in chocolate, and then we smash it, and then we go smash down that donut. And what do? Is we go into that donut coma afterwards, because remember, just so you know, when you have that Sunday donut is going to go to your tushy, because first of all, you weren't exercising for an hour in church, and then you ate something that caused a huge spike in your insulin storage hormone. So every time insulin gets spiked, it goes into fat storage. And it's foods like this, like the refined carbohydrates, that we need to stay away from. It's also there's a tremendous amount of excess calories. And if you're eating it, it's worse because if we're not exercising there. So this is what's called the glycemic index. And this is really important to understand. So let me go back right here. Sorry. Kind of got excited there. There we go. This is what's called our glycemic index. So what you should have heard things about the glycemic index before. And what this talks about is how our high blood sugar levels work. So when we consume food, because we have this little organ, the pancreas. And so the more sugar that goes in the body, the more insulin that it has to release. And remember, insulin equals fat storage. So they've done a double-blind test where you drink that glucose. They have people drink glucose, and then they do a glucose tolerance test. What they found was that they had you do the blood test a week and a half ago. Like I had somebody do the blood test a week and a half ago, and they said, okay, let's drink this glucose stuff and see how your body's responding to the sugar that they gave you. So you drink it. It tastes like kind of like a Sprite. It's super sweet. But think about this. What they're looking for is you drink something sweet, and like the glycemic index causes something to go up as high as it possibly can. So guess what? Some of the foods that are on the top of the glycemic index are things like beer, things like sugar, things like bread, pasta, cereals. That's one little bit of homework that you can do is actually look at like search out foods that are high on the glycemic index. So when they did this study right here, they looked at glucose, sugar foods, and they had somebody eat beans. And what you notice is that when you eat sugar foods, insulin spiked up really high, and when you ate lentils or beans, that the insulin it went down, only spiked up about 30%. So that's what happens to you when you're eating these processed foods. So if you look at these two people, which person's going to gain weight first, right? The person on the right that's only goes up 30%, that's only storing 30% fat, or the person on the left that's storing 100% of their calories from fat. It's not calories, it's what the calories do to your glycemic index. So here's a list of some of the high glycemic foods. We have things like cornflakes and pretzels and waffles and total cereal, graham crackers, Cheerios. These are all the things that taste good, but those are the things that our body is saying, hey, I really like these sugars there. And these are the things that sell, right? These are the things that make you coming back, keep you coming back for more. But these are the things that will keep you fat. All right, so let's talk about refined sugars real quick. And this is a pretty crazy fact, because this research study that was done, and I think it was about 2001, where they basically found that all the foods that we consume today, out of all the foods all the foods that are in the supermarket, right? 70% of the stuff is typically in the middle of the supermarket, but 70% of the foods that we have today, they didn't even exist for our ancestors. Think about that. If you start looking at the refined sugars, the refined oil, the grains, and some of the dairies there, 70%, all that gray area, our ancestors didn't have those things. So if we want to have a healthy body like our ancestors, we have to eat what we were genetically designed to eat, what our ancestors were designed to eat there. So the next thing is that, a lot of these, what's interesting is that these foods, though, the breads and the pastas and the cereals and the alcohol and the fatty meats, they comprise about 70% of the diet of the average person out there. So 70% of the foods that we eat didn't exist for our ancestors, and 70% of the foods that we eat, they basically are the ones that are toxic for us and they're deficient for us, right? And these are the ones that if you walk into the supermarket, those are the ones that are in the center. Try walking around the supermarket, right? And in that 70% of the supermarket in the center, what you'll find is that 99% of the food in those center aisles is junk. And that's why when we do our shop with the doc, we teach people to shop the outside of the store, not the inside of the store. Now, if you go to Sprouts, it's a little bit different, because at Sprouts, they've moved all the vegetables to the center of the store. But really just look at what are the amount of foods that we're eating, where those foods are coming from. But here's what we call the inflection point. And we really have to look at things like obesity. And really, like I said, back basically in the 60s and 70s, it was pretty consistent. And then all of a sudden, we start to see this massive spike going up there. And then the question we have to really ask ourselves is, what happened? What happened that created this inflection point? And what I'll tell you, there was one thing that happened, and it's what's called high fructose corn syrup. High fructose corn syrup. It's the thing that we put into our juices, it's the thing that we put into our sodas, it's the thing that we use as artificial sweeteners. It creates a longer shelf life, but basically with high fructose corn syrup, it actually activates our insulin levels or our fat storage hormones pretty much faster than anything else. And it is in almost every food that's out there that's a processed food. So you want to stay away from high fructose corn syrup as much as you possibly can. Look at the labels. You're going to have to be a label reader. We have classes online about how to go shopping there too. But I think that the challenge is this, is that most of us are in what we call sugar bondage, right? And, and we just have to, to be real about this. And this is really how bad it is. You have to think of sugar as being substance abuse. And we know that if we don't have sugar in our house, we're not going to eat it, right? Who can relate to that? But I remember when we were kids and, everybody loved, like chocolate, right? And so if there's chocolate in the house, guess what happens? It's going to get eaten. So what happens? What did my mom do? She just didn't buy chocolate. And guess what? We didn't eat. We didn't eat chocolate. But it sounds crazy, but it's absolutely true. If it's in our house, we're going to eat it. And it's substance abuse. You got to get it out of your system. You got to get it out of your house. And you got to know that here's the cool thing is if you don't buy it and you don't have it at home, you're not going to be able to eat it. And guess what happens? Over time, it's like an alcoholic knows that, for substance abuse, an alcoholic knows that, like, if you stay away from slippery people and slippery places, you're not going to slip, right? If they don't have alcohol in the house, they're much less likely to drink. If they stay in an environment where people aren't, drinking, they're probably not going to drink. And if they have relationships with people that don't drink, they're probably not going to do it. And I think it's a very slippery slope. So we really have to look at treating our sugar addictions as a substance abuse problem and really start to change the relationships that we have not only with sugar, but having it in our house and move from there. So I just want to tap into a couple things here is what we call this, the dieting pitfalls on this. I think the number one is that we want to keep an eye on too much fruit. We know that fruit has sugar in it, and it can definitely create a spike of insulin. But the biggest thing I would tell people is be careful not to drink your calories, especially in today's world. And you can get it from a smoothie. Literally, there are some of the smoothies. You look at them, and shopping at this whole something supermarket. And I was in their cafe, and I bought a smoothie there. It's called a Green Goddess, and it was like oh my gosh! I looked at it, and then it's got everything in there that was going to raise my, it was almost like a milkshake, right? Like it was going to raise my blood sugar level up high. It actually wasn't a Green Goddess, but it was something like that. Like 750 calories in this smoothie that I was getting to try to be healthy. So be careful with our drinks. Drinking when we drink our calories, it's going to spike our blood sugar level there. So try staying away from too much fruit. Dairies, a lot of times somebody's a diabetic and their blood sugar is low. They give them dairy to raise up their insulin levels. Dairy is most people are allergic to it. It's toxic. It creates a lot of inflammation. The other thing is grains. We got the grainitarians, like the people that's all they eat. The grains have been shown. That there was a study once that I read that said if you eat a chocolate bar and a piece of toast, the toast will actually raise your blood sugar level faster than a chocolate bar there. So we need to be careful also about like exercising. And a lot of times when we exercise, we're deficient in our like it burns calories, and so we get really hungry. And so we want to have these after exercise shakes there. Your body will crave sugar at that time. If you're one of the best things that you can do is actually like trying to hold off as long as you can after exercise. You're making sure that you have a protein shake or like some good healthy fats like avocado after your exercise. And then last thing is skipping breakfast. Now, this is an important one. Is you can skip breakfast as long as it's a plan. And I teach you intermittent fasting in the office, and we'll talk about that at the next webinar there. But the big thing is a lot of times people skip breakfast and then they get so hungry by 10 o'clock that they all of a sudden go, like they look like Henry VIII at the snack bar, right? They just go eat everything that they possibly can. If it's part of a plan with intermittent fasting, it's okay to skip breakfast because you're going to eat your calories later on. But if you're just skipping breakfast because you don't have time, just know you're setting yourself up for failure there. All right. So there's what I want to talk really is I want to create a bonfire, right? I want to create this fire in you. And this is really the plan that we're going to have moving forward. We're going to have what we call a paleo lifestyle. And there's a lot of key words out there as far as nutrition. You got paleo and you have keto and you have this and you have that. We want to have it as a part of an overall lifestyle for you. So unlimited vegetables. We want to have, like if we're going to have our meats, we want to have lean, natural, grass-fed beef or chicken, or like free-range chickens there. Some fruits, and really the best thing is fruits that are in season. nuts and seeds, but we really want to limit starch, carbohydrates, processed carbohydrates, and no sugars. If this is your plan, right? If this is your max living plan, this is your 15 pounds and 15 pounds healthier in 30 days. This is all we really have to do. And next week we're going to put all the pieces together of how we're going to do that. So, what is paleo? And a lot of times people ask me this question, what is paleo? Basically, it's simple. It basically says our genes dictate our needs, right? Our genes haven't changed in 40,000 years. I mean, 4,000 years or 40,000 years. But our genes were shaped over a long time by our environmental experiences. So, but our genes haven't changed. There's a certain way that we're required. And when they look at our ancestors, they didn't have the degenerative diseases that we have. But all of that changed with the agricultural revolution, where we started eating a lot more, breads and pastas. I mean, think about it. Like, where would a person go and if they were like a hunter gatherer, and where would they go to find grain? Like, it's just a weed. Like, there's not a hunter gatherer is not going to go and find bread and then go try to make bread and on his fire. Like, it just didn't happen at that time. So I guess the thing is that what does paleo look like? So the approach that we're really going to be taking is unlimited non-starchy vegetables. And we'll get you food lists on this. No refined grains, none of the bad grains there. And I want you to write down that this high fiber is a big thing that we want to look at, because when we have high fiber, it actually cancels out grams of sugar or carbohydrates there. So the more high fiber something is, the less carbohydrates that it has. I was reading this study about 3 years ago, and there was a study on cancer patients. They found that 95% of cancer patients were acidic. And what does that mean? And we're going to talk about this, but the more toxic the food, if our foods are toxic, they're going to become very acidic. And our bodies will start to become acidic, and we can't create white blood cells in there. The acidity causes damage on the inside of our body there. And so we really want to make sure that we want to have like what we call very alkaline foods, foods that are rich in phytochemicals and nutrients there. And we'll talk a little bit more about this on the next class about how to become alkaline. But really, when we want foods that are vitamin and mineral and antioxidant rich, because our body constantly needs to reproduce healthy cells, and to continue to divide, they have to have the nutrients. So if you're not giving your cells the nutrients that they need, like like berries and no refined grains and staying away from the bad carbohydrates, we're not going to have the tools that we need to regenerate healthy cells. So what is the zone we want to be in look like, right? And it's really, like the basic foundation is that, it's about 40% of carbs from healthy food choices, 30% of our carbs from like protein. So when I say carbs, I mean from green vegetables and living things, and 30% of our diet from fat. It's the rule of thirds. It's about a 30-30-30 there. Next week, we're also going to talk, though, about keto. And we're going to talk more about keto in depth, because keto has a higher fat percentage, and it's a little bit harder for some people to actually do keto because it takes a lot more discipline, and it changes your physiology tremendously more. But if you do have advanced health problems, then we will just definitely pay attention to next week there. But what does this look like on a daily basis? You just have to ask 3 questions. Ready? Where's the plants? Where's the fat? Where's the protein, right? Every time you're eating a meal, just ask yourself, where's the plants? Where's the fat? Where's the protein? Where's the plants? Where's the fat? Where's the protein? Where's the plants? Where's the fat? Where's the protein, right? And these are pancakes, but they're protein pancakes. They're actually made from our protein powder. So where's the plants? Where's the fats? It's got good, healthy fats in there. Where's the protein? Right in the pancakes there. Look at that. Doesn't that look absolutely delicious? Like, try eating that and being full. See, a lot of times our taste buds, we look at that like, oh, that's a starter salad. No, that's a full meal for us there. And the more that we eat like this, our taste buds will become sensitized, and we'll actually feel like the foods that we're eating, we can't even handle eating them anymore because they just taste so bad. So look at this one. Where's the plants? Where's the fats? Where's the protein? The plants and the fats are right inside of there. Plants, fats, protein. Plants, fats, protein. Plants, fats, protein. You can do it. You can just do that. So here's our do's and our don'ts, right? So what are some of the do's and don'ts and the do nots there? Simple stuff that we've gone through. No starchy vegetables. Some fruits good. Meat, poultry, fish. Kale, healthy, range, healthy protein, free range. Eggs. These good quality eggs, not the cheap ones in the stores. You want to have a free range egg that has high omega-3s. You want to have important natural, like the natural fats are important, and the vegetables and the healthy olive oils there. Eating seeds and drinking plenty of water. Alkalizing water is fantastic for the system, and maintaining your pH balance in your body is really, really critical. And so our ultimate goal is to keep our body very alkaline when we eat. But some of the don'ts, well, these are the things that are like, we know like refined carbohydrates, because it leads to a spike in our insulin. And insulin is what? That's right. It's our fat storage hormone, right? So insulin's a fat storage hormone. So like stay away from high fructose corn syrup. Remember dairy products, sodas, juices, alcohols. All those things will raise our insulin, which will store fat. But we would need to have good quality fat, and we'll learn later that quality fat burns fat. We need avocado oil, coconut oil, olive oil. We know that these things have a positive impact, anti-inflammatory impact on our body. So we want to make sure that we actually have like the stay away from toxic foods. We just covered a lot of that. We want to have healthy plants, healthy fats, healthy proteins, healthy plants, healthy fats, healthy proteins with each meal. And if we do that, that's the basic plan that we're going to work with over here. Next thing is this. Look, I don't have to tell you, we got to stay away from our sedentary lifestyle. So we have toxic foods that we just covered, plants, fats, proteins with each meal. Basically, by just doing that, we flip that food pyramid right over. It sounds crazy, right? It's like the opposite of everything that we're doing since the 70s. If we just do that, then if we do the opposite what everybody else is doing, we'll have the opposite result. And then the opposite result will be we'll be healthy, we'll be thin, we'll be happy, and we'll be complete there. So I guess the thing that I talk about when we talk about sedentary lifestyles is that, for most of us, we're actually living in captivity right now, right? We always hear about sitting as the new smoking, right? You look at the head, like captivity, just even on the lockdown, we're sitting as the smoking, we're sitting 8 hours a day. And this lifestyle, the sedentary lifestyle is killing us. So what we do know is that we need to move our bodies, because if we don't move our bodies, it creates stress. Our bodies are designed to move, and we have to be able to remember that. So humans living today, I love this, that human beings living today inherited a genome that was programmed for daily physical activity and a high fiber diet. Like, think about that. We are genetically programmed. So if we're not exercising, we're going against our program. We inherited this from our parents. And just because our parents didn't exercise doesn't mean that they were following their genetic programming. So that's probably why they were, they're overweight. They were sick. They're on their medications there. So every day we need to move. And every single day, Dr. Das does a surge video. It's a 12-minute workout video. So the muscles and everything, it causes the muscles to fire. The movement causes the lymphatic system to carry white blood cells. It makes our bones stronger. It stimulates our gastrointestinal system for it to work. It strengthens our cardiovascular system. It strengthens your nervous system. Literally everything relies on you moving. Imagine if you just did your wobbles every single day for 12 minutes there. And then you did a 12-minute surge, you would do more activity than most people would do in a single day. So final summary here. Okay, guys, what causes elevated insulin? It's going to be our food choices, refined sugars, refined carbohydrates, the fast carbs, dairy, and the energy imbalance, excess calories, too many calories, no matter if they're good calories or bad calories. If you're overeating, it's going to, your body's going to have to store those calories somewhere. And sedentary living, not moving enough, it's going to have to store it somewhere there. So I guess the last thing that we're going to talk about is about going to the gym. I'll just work it off if I go to the gym. Well, look, as I said before, you know, we go to the gym and we burn 600 calories. I was at a spin class today and I burned 600 calories. I could literally, all of a sudden, it gives me permission many times. We say, well, I just burned 600 calories. Now I'm going to go, eat this muffin that's 400 calories. Like, it's so much easier not to eat the muffin than to sit on a cycle for an hour on a spin class. So just that we can still go to the gym, we still work out, but the food choices, they literally cancel out like all of our bad all of our good work that we've been doing there. So we basically, energy balance comes down to this. It comes down to calories in, or what our caloric needs are, the intake, the output, and the hormonal impact there. So we know that our calorie in, calorie out are important, and the intake of inputs is about how much we burn, and how much we consume is super critical. It's very simple to take calories in, but it's not as simple to burn the calories off. See, back in the day, food was not just as readily available as it is now, and what we'd have to do is we'd have to work our backsides off. We'd have to go hunt and gather more and output in order to get the calories. Now we have to do less, right, to get the calories. Now you can have like Shopify bring your calories to you. So I think the main thing is that it's about that energy balance. We need to work hard to get our calories, but we don't need to eat more calories as a reward for working hard there. And I think that, so we just know that we do have very thrifty genes. They don't like to burn calories. Excuse me. There's 7 hormones that actually raise like your blood sugar, and there's only one hormone that lowers our blood sugar. We're not designed to have blood sugar there. It's very easy to consume calories, but it's hard to burn them. So what I want to remind you is that when you're at the gym and you burn 600 calories and then you go home and you don't eat 600 calories from carbs, just tell yourself that you actually just burn, that you just saved 1,200 calories. The easy math is that every 3,500 calories is a pound of fat. So if you're not eating a lot of like carbohydrates, you're not going to be storing fat. You're going to be releasing fat, so your body can get rid of it. So I think that, like I said, the calories are very easy to consume. But I saw this one thing. It said it's weight loss is 30% gym, 70% diet, and abs are made in the kitchen. They're not in the gym. There's people in the gym that go there every single week and they haven't lost a pound. Have you ever tried that? Like, you've never lost a pound at the gym and you're struggling to lose the weight and you're trying to get that 6-pack. Just remember that it's 70% diet, 70% of the things that we're going to teach you, and 30% what happens at the gym there. Oh, there's that slide. Sorry, I didn't share that with you. All right. So, but exercise is critical, right? It is critical for our bodies to have optimal health. And so remember, we're talking about not just weight loss, we're talking about being healthy. So we know that our ancestors would exert themselves on a daily basis. And when they're doing that, they're burning calories. The output was always greater than the intake. And we know that to rebalance our hormones, we have to exert ourselves. We know that rebalancing our hormones takes a minimum of 30 minutes per day of exercise. That's of sweating, moving, panting, changing the physiology in our body. If you're doing the high intensity exercise like we teach you in this office, you can do it in 12 minutes there. But the average person takes about 30 minutes because they're not working hard enough. And we'll teach you how to work harder so you can cut that amount of time down there. So the goal is when we rebalance our hormones with exercise, it's the key, right? Like exertion, the amount of effort that you put into it. And maybe when you start off, you're not going to be, an Olympic, marathon runner, but you can just walk a little bit faster when you're walking. You can lift a little bit heavier when you're lifting. If you're doing burpees, you can do a little bit faster burpees. It doesn't matter what you do, but also it matters what moves you. Like, do something that's exciting for yourself. Because remember, we talked about it has to be sustainable there. All right. So last thing is this. We talked about toxic food choices. We talked about the sedentary lifestyle. And I think the last thing that I really want to talk is about social or emotional stress. Social emotional stress, there's really 2 main ones that I find. When it comes to this, we all know about cortisol and elevated cortisol. When you have elevated cortisol, it's with more stress, less stress, you have less cortisol. We know things like sleep will have an impact on how we heal and recover from the stress of our day. We have things like psychological stresses that lead to increased cortisol, fights with our family and work stresses there. But the one thing that we know is that our cortisol levels go up, our insulin levels go up, and guess what happens? We start storing everything for fat. So the more that we stress, the harder the more that we're going to be storing fat, and that's a big key. So I always talk about one last thing, that we can't manage stress, but we can manage our peace. So at times like this, we want to start focusing on managing our peace, managing how we focus and how we think about things there. By the time you get your stress under control, then your car tire goes out on you, right? Or there's traffic on the freeway. It's not what happens to you, it's how you respond to what happens to you. Now, this is the last big lie that I'm really going to cover is this. It's about sleep. And I used to think that sleep was unnecessary. It was just something that got in the way of me getting up in the morning, right? But what we find is that sleep's absolutely critical. Our cortisol cycle, or our circadian rhythms, we know that our body naturally has rhythms that it follows. And so if we sleep according to these rhythms, then our cortisol levels are going to be regulated, and it's going to be much more like able to adapt to the world there. So there are definite simple rules. Sleep when it's dark. And it's really tough to sleep when the light comes out, but that's because there's a gland called the pineal gland. It releases hormones in the body. So when you're sitting up watching TV at night, of course you're not going to be able to sleep because you're stimulating the pineal gland there, and it's going to mess with your rhythms there. And so what do? We close the shutters and we cover the curtains so that we can sleep in the morning. Ideally, what the goal is that most of us are psychologically exhausted, not physically exhausted. And that mental stress really kicks in, and their cortisol levels should normally fluctuate through the day. And they're going to be the highest in the morning and go down during the day. And that's designed for us to be able to hunt and gather food, right? When we were hunters and gatherers, we want to be able to wake up, go do things there. But now with social stress, with all the electronic stress, our scheduling, the lighting, cortisol is chronically elevated all day long. So rule number one, try to go to bed at the same time every day. Rule number two, the closer to when it gets dark that you go to bed, the better you're going to be. Who says that you have to go to bed at 10 and wake up at 8, right? Or 6. Just listen to your body there, but know that sleep is when your body is actually recovering there. And so I think really the best practice that we can talk about this is especially with children. Let those kids get into a regular sleep cycle. Find that dark, quiet, comfortable room for them to go to sleep at night. Get off the computers, get off the equipment, get off the iPads, get off the technology, because we know it stimulates the nervous system. We know it stimulates the brain. And to get off those things at least 90 minutes before sleep. That's how long it takes for your brain to unwind from the technology that we're using on a daily basis there. Let's see. Last one, sorry. So best practices, you listen to your body, look up what your circadian rhythms are, 8 to 9 hours, quiet, dark, comfortable, eat fast, and make it your household culture. Like, this is a time we all go to bed early. We don't stay up at night looking at our cell phones there, watching Netflix in bed. So I guess I love this quote. It says, given the effectiveness of the popular weight loss diets, the adoption of healthy lifestyles is really more appropriate for winning the war on disease. So when we bring this all together, obviously we see a lot of information. It's conflicting information when it comes to diet and nutrition and weight loss. And today we went into a lot of stuff and the principles that you need to understand. And so the goal for tonight was not to give you a fish, but teach you how to catch fish, right? So that you can go fishing and once you know how to do something, the way that you own it is when you teach it to somebody. And so I want you to teach this information to people, because there's a lot of confusion out there about nutrition. If you can't teach it right now, make sure you have some, forward this to somebody. Make sure you get them on the next webinar that we're doing next Wednesday night. And make sure, just leave your name on here if you want to get on there. I think most of you will already be registered for that. But it's really right now, it's about adopting a healthy lifestyle, eating healthy, eating good nutrients, good fuel, exercising regularly, burning the calories that we need. And number 3 is really controlling the stresses, the physical, chemical, emotional stresses, making sure you're getting adjusted so your body can adapt to those stresses there. And not doing anything, not making it our goal to do something in the short term, but for the long term, because that's when all the goals are. And I know a lot of you guys are here, are in the practice of getting adjusted in the office. But some of you on the line haven't gotten adjusted, and pardon me, but as I know that we can buy healthy food, and I know that we can buy healthy exercise, and we can by getting adjusted, it's going to give us the best long-term results in there. So make sure you're sticking with your 5 essentials. Make sure you're doing your home care exercises. We want to take you through this fat problem because you know that fat is not a fat problem, it's a hormonal problem. And what causes your hormones to be messed up is toxic to deficient foods. And those toxic deficient foods lead to an insulin spike. That insulin spike, how does that affect the body? What does it do? It stores fat there. And so, our goal right now in this today is to really teach you how to impact your hormones. How do we do that physically, right? We move your body, our brain, we go to sleep so our brain can have stress off the central nervous system. We get adjusted to take the stress off that central nervous system. When that nervous system is working right, it allows our body to absorb nutrients better, it allows our body to move better, it allows our body to function better. And if we are exercising, that it puts even more stress on our body there. So whenever we do any of the workshops that we do, people always come up to us and say, hey, how can I get more information on this? How can I get my nervous system and spine checked? Just go to www.drtjosborne.com. Just send me a personal message, leave a note, call us. We'll get you checked. But I love hearing the stories, and I love us doing this as a family together there. But really what happens is that when you come in, we run a scan of your nervous system. We get a score of where you're at. We take x-rays to see where there's areas of subluxation or misalignment in the spine interfering with your nervous system. On the call, normally it's $280 because we're doing the webinar. For the people that sign up between now and next week, it's only $40. We'll get you a $40 gift certificate that'll only allow it to be $40. And we're going to just donate that to the Research Foundation there. Look, guys, I just want to thank you for being online. Leave your questions. I'll make sure I get back to you on them. But just make sure you sign somebody else up for next week, and we're gonna nail this. I'm sorry we went a little bit long, but I feel like there was a lot of information we needed to get to. So I just, as we kind of move through this whole thing, I really want to just, like I said, thank you for spending time with me. I really appreciate you guys. Go back and look through this. We're going to make sure we post the slides just so you can have a reference. And then we'll see you next week, same time, just a different day. Have a great night.